are live. Hello, beautiful audience. Welcome to another edition of Unnamed Sunday Crypto. My name is Seth Estrada. You know who it is. You're on the Seth Estrada channel. And I have with me my older, wiser, and some would argue much prettier brother, Aaron.
Yeah, much better looking.
I've only heard much prettier. I mean, people say, like, with that beard, you got a pretty mouth. I mean, I'm not going to say who.
You've never seen that movie, by the way. Was it mouth or lips? You got pretty lips.
Yeah, I don't know. But
messed up.
Let me do this. There we go. There we go. Give you the top corner over there, and then I will. There we go. Now we got. Oh, there we go. Got top corner going on there, guys. We have all kinds of stuff that happened this week. Crazy week, right? I mean, in crypto, sure, volatility, weird price action. We wanted to talk a little about that today. JMS, how are you, man? Good to see JMS vlogs in the comments. Appreciate you tuning in. Yeah, Loop the Loop was crazy, but all kinds of crazy news, right? I mean, it's not just that crypto went crazy. This guy is like the embodiment of crypto this week, and I feel really bad saying that because I mean, yeah, like my condolences to this guy's family, right? They did not expect to see him do what he did, and apparently he even went on the radio. He was talking to the guys at the at traffic control, talking like he went out of his way to say, like, I'm going to disappoint some people a lot. I'm truly sorry. Like, the guy was really not well emotionally, so I feel really bad about all that. But man, yeah, the loop was like, dude, he got this passenger plane to do that, this Airbus to do like aerial acrobatics.
Yeah, I mean, physics, just because a plane's not rated for aerobatics doesn't mean you can't induce it to do aerobatics.
Yeah, fair point. Well, that, and I mean, he also, I guess it was only him. There's no telling what his fuel load was. Like, yeah, any number of variables that maybe he had more insight into. But yeah, so that guy. Let me do a quick audience shout out, guys. Thanks so much for showing up. Really appreciate it. Eric Dobkin is the first comment, but I'm pretty sure if Myron shows up, he's going to say first also. Newbie, good to see you. Abdullah, Bludget, Amier, Dragon. We've got J Riggs in the house. Yankee, always good to see you in the comments, buddy. And JMS Vlogs, as well as Big MCO and Philip. All right. Ooh, Philip, that's a really good one. KuCoin. Tell me about it, guys. Tell us in the comments. We might bring that up. This is one of the only. Last week we went live, both from the studio rather, and this is the first time that we've done a live stream this style. We normally
that's true. That's true. Last time we did it, we were both in the same room. Are people talking on the Discord?
No, they're talking on the YouTube comments, and I apologize. Over here on Streamlabs or on OBS, I have a live feed, so I get to see some of this stuff. And guys, your comments are baked in also. Souplander, good to see you. Hello. So we've got some of those comments up. You can pull the comments up if you'd like to, so we'll go ahead and engage those at the same time. And it might be helpful to have that up in another window. Okay. But guys, this is kind of the first Unnamed Sunday Crypto live stream podcast style, where we're both remote and we talk about some of the stuff that's happened throughout the week, not just in terms of crypto, in terms of Masternodes, which is really something Aaron's big into, and not in terms of mining so much, which, as you guys know, I'm into mining and talking about proof of work coins, or price action, right? Market stuff, but just sort of crypto in general and stuff that touches on cryptocurrency and then blockchain technology. We've talked about all kinds of things on the show, but this week it's just so many crazy things happened that we could start almost anywhere and probably still fill like an hour or two. I don't think we're going to do that, but yeah. But guys, as far as crypto itself, man, Bitcoin. I'm gonna do the Seinfeld bit. What's with the price of Bitcoin? Yeah,
it's I think this lack of essentially this last rally was sort of a failed rally, and I think that I'm okay. Again, disclaimer: this is not investment advice, and I'm not a financial advisor. But it's looking like we're probably going to go into a more protracted bearish period based on this last failed rally on Bitcoin. Now, is that the end of the world? No, it's not. It's funny because you read some of the news, and I don't have any of the articles up, but people are saying, is this the end for Bitcoin? It's like, wait a second. How is it going? How is a currency like a open source bootstrapped currency that literally started from no value at all, still trading at something above $6,000, or even if it goes back to like 40, I don't know, the bottom's probably going to be somewhere around 4,700 or maybe a little lower, 4,000 or something. How is something going from zero and still trading at 4,000 a failure of a system that bootstrapped literally from just like the will of people to have their own money?
Right. Yeah. I mean, this is why I made this on our. I mean, this was about a month ago, right? While we were shooting Unnamed Sunday Crypto, but I was like, I think we need a stark reminder. So my sources say no.
Yeah. It's just interesting. Always this sort of everybody calling for it to be dead. Simultaneously, there's a lot of really interesting positive news happening in the whole space, like. Well, the institutional, the continued sort of drive towards the, I don't know, maybe the financialization, which is a bad thing, but more like the institutional players getting involved with cryptocurrencies.
Right. I mean, it's kind of funny because it's sort of like how hipsters kind of like buck against the word gentrification, like crypto purists, right? Crypto loyalists that are like, no, I'm totally a cypherpunk. They buck against that word like institutional money. No, we can't accept institutional money. It's dirty.
Well, the bad part of it is the financialization. And I actually did read an interesting article where the analysis was kind of on point on this particular aspect, which was that, okay, so there's because Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies are typically looked at as like a bearer instrument. Traditionally, their price is driven by the actual demand and supply and market, the actual genuine market around that scarce token of value, and there isn't any false sort of leverage or paper sort of built around that. Whereas with the financialization, with things like futures markets, or even some of the maybe other new derivative things that have yet to be invented, create a sort of artificial, I guess you could say, clones or duplicates of Bitcoin, and then satisfy the trading desire. Even though theoretically they create more liquidity, they also sort of undermine the bearer instrument value proposition of the Bitcoin and the artificial scarcity part. So I can't remember. I read this in a couple places, and I can't remember the exact article. Otherwise, I could maybe bring it up. But that is actually something to be mindful of. I think on the whole, though, the sort of institutional involvement in cryptocurrencies is going to be positive because it lends credibility to them, and also just to the underlying sort of blockchain stuff, right? It's like, well, if this technology is good enough to actually track like money-like tokens or units, then certainly everybody already agrees that it's good enough for doing tracking other types of custody or tokens. So yeah, I mean, it's just it's this ongoing evolution, this roller coaster ride that is cryptocurrency.
Dude. Right, so I think I pulled up. Gosh, what did I pull up here? So I got cryptocurrency or coin market cap, and then I also have CoinGecko because I've been asked, hey Seth, spread the love. There are other, there are other price action sites out there, right? Other market sites out there. So we've got CoinGecko available to view as well.
So Dragon says, where is that logic? And you'll have to clarify what the.
I think we had a couple of miners talking about mining certain coins and then exchanging. So okay. Yeah, that might have been. Oh man, Yankee's not wrong. You're not wrong. Bitcoin could have at least bought us dinner first.
These bear markets are always a little bit painful, especially from mining. I mean, I'll be frank, that's sort of when I dropped out. Well, it was a combination of a more bearish market, but then also at the time I had to move my farm, and it was just it was overwhelming to me at the time. So I just that's when I exited mining myself. But benefit of 2020 hindsight, had I just continued to mine through solid that period when everyone else was dropping out. Yeah.
Hold on a second. I've got something for you. Air horns for Aaron, because he just said, you guys heard it here first on Unnamed Sunday Crypto. When in doubt, keep your rigs running.
Yeah, or at least try to figure out how to make it profitable, right? I mean, when the herd is running one way, that's your best opportunity to try to figure out what to do the other. I mean, I've been trying to learn a little bit more about technical analysis, and that's why I'm thinking this sort of third false rally is probably sealed us into more of a bearish trade and sideways trend for a while until things can consolidate. Now, the quicker it does, the quicker we sort of put the bottom in, the sooner we can start working on actually getting back on the historic growth of crypto, of Bitcoin in particular. And overall, I'm long term always bullish on Bitcoin, especially now with Lightning Network and stuff coming along. I mean, this second layer solutions.
That's awesome, man. Let's talk about that a little bit. There's been, as you guys know, there's no shortage of controversy between the two camps in Bitcoin, right? So the two development camps in Bitcoin of Lightning Network versus the BCH crowd, right? So the BCH please crowd.
Yeah. Bigger blocks better.
I don't know, man. See, I think it's so early in the game that nobody can at least, based on precedent, nobody can disprove that logic works today. But talking about modeling and projections and then moving into a future where we need these networks to be more performant at scale, then that's where it becomes a problem. And actually we do need to use, what is it called? Math, right?
Yeah.
To figure it out. And can't just say that it one approach will work and make blanket statements yet.
Yeah,
BCH is working. So
well, think about this. I mean, just calculating on-chain transactions, and this is why I think that the desire to keep a cryptocurrency functional, which was the stated desire of sort of trying to increase the block size for Bitcoin Cash, and I'm going to give away, which camp I'm in now. That's a laudable sort of goal, to try to keep it functional. And there was that crunch period last year when volume was high enough that Bitcoin was suffering and transaction fees just went through the roof. And they're still sort of somewhat high, but they're not like what they were. On-chain scaling works in the short term. There's no question about it. You can linearly increase the transaction volume that you can do by just increasing the size of the blocks, or maybe doing something like SegWit, where you can sort of squeeze a little bit more into the blocks, or sort of create this accessory extension to the block, and you can still fit more in the overall block structure. But long term, that solution just doesn't work. So and that's the Achilles heel of blockchains in general. I mean, you can try to come up with different approaches where it's pretty essentially all on chain, like EOS is doing, where it has a slightly different mechanism, but essentially all of the transactions do occur on chain. They're just coming up with a faster consensus mechanism for applying or appending those transactions to their blockchain. But in the end, do you really want to record every single transaction that has ever occurred on your network for all eternity? I mean, it's not necessary a lot of the time. I mean, arguably that's sort of transactions can be taken off chain with other mechanisms like exchanges and stuff, or side chains, and those are other scaling approaches that other groups are looking at. But in the end, I kind of lean more towards let's try to figure out a bit other more sophisticated or slick sort of second layer solutions that still at the end of the day settle to the blockchain and have a really tight or have a high level of security as a result of being settled to a really strong blockchain like Bitcoin has such a with the mining network that it has. It's it's fairly secure, right? It's like the most secure blockchain there is. So that's kind of the camp that I fall into, is that sort of let's come up with second layer solutions, or side chain type solutions where we can still leverage, like I was saying in our last conversation about that you can build centralized systems on top of a decentralized system, but you cannot build a decentralized system on top of a centralized system. So you need that strong blockchain as the backbone. And then it's about striking a balance between things like, how much do you want to record on that blockchain? And also, how are you going to figure out the performance or the performance scaling mechanism? So.
No. Lucas says that he made the tough decision today to shut down his rigs. Lucas, tell us down in the comments while we chat through some of the news here and go over some of the other issues. What is the price per kilowatt hour of electricity in your market? Maybe we can workshop that later on. But yeah, what's the price per kilowatt hour in cents for running your rigs? And of course,
that's a bummer. And that's a similar reason why I had to shut down. I was struggling to find. This was during the last. It actually the timing didn't completely match up with the bear market. It had more to do with just losing access to my location. But yeah, it was. Had to find a new place, and it was too much of a pain.
Yeah, no, it's a bummer. And we talked about this on I think, gosh, earlier on this week when it wasn't yesterday, guys. It wasn't with Scambuster Saturdays. And guys, thank you so much for doing Scambuster Saturdays and being so actively participating and suggesting coin projects that I could take a look at. And the exchange that we looked at, again, haven't heard back from that exchange and haven't heard back from the first coin project either. Some of the devs are apparently on vacation or something. And had somebody reach out, but this last week we had so much participation on some of the live streams. Dragon and Yankee, I don't know if you're referring to Eric's comment about missing out on Doge because he stopped mining, or what. But yeah, we're talking a little bit about some of this stuff because man cannot live on proof of work conversations alone.
You're right.
Crypto can't live on proof of work conversations alone. We have to look at it holistically. Otherwise, like, what are we doing mining? We have to do this strategically. And
you do have to do what's financially right for you. So, Eric was saying he made the similar mistake that, I was regretting is had I continued to mine through that period. So let's just take, a Litecoin, for example. Difficulty stayed really flat during that sort of bearish market. It's not like nobody was really buying new ASICs or deploying new ASICs or whatever. So even though the profitability might have been marginal for that whole period of time, the difficulty wasn't too high. It meant that like you could essentially keep the same gear and not really touch any of your setup and not be in the typical sort of arms race for almost like 2 years. Difficulty was pretty flat on Litecoin. And so that was a chance that you could have really stacked coins. Now, you might have essentially just been buying them, right? Like you might have reached that equilibrium where you're essentially paying the cost of your electricity and everything like that is essentially like buying Litecoin. But you can typically mine coins for something that is slightly better than what you could buy them for if you were to just trade that money directly. And then you also have the benefit if you've already set up your infrastructure for doing it, that you can use your business structure to continue running operations, right? You actually are still depreciating your equipment, and your expenses are can all be applied to your actual business expenses, so you can sort of recapture some of you get a little bit more tax efficiency there, right? So,
see, that's just it. We talk about this a lot on the on my channel. We talk about this a lot in the Discord server, where like you have to plan a business model that works for you, and you have to be able to like reasonably just make sense of your capex and your opex, and at the end of the year, again, disclaimer all over again, guys, this is not business or financial or legal advice. Talk to a CPA, like talk to somebody that knows more, and like spreadsheets are your friend. It's okay to have like multiple spreadsheets across your business that speak to these different sides of your business so that you can figure out at a glance without having to keep it all up here, right? Like we have enough to track in terms of current difficulties and block rewards for various different coin projects. And now with so many alts to mine and so many possible alts that maybe strategically you want to mine something and you want to strategically do a dump at the moment it hits an exchange. There's so much of the price action, difficulty, and reward in mining that we're all trying to keep up here. That trying to like run your business the same way, something's going to break, right? Something's going to give. Something's going to leak through that the sieve of your mind versus having it all written down and working with a qualified professional that can say, yeah, that's a solid business plan. Let's lock it in. And if you see that performance is this way over this quarter, then maybe pivot or maybe don't. I don't know. But having somebody that's not into crypto, all they're into is making your business run well. That's why, you gotta like not just listen to people on YouTube.
Well, and if you're a mid-sized miner, I know, probably a lot of the audience here also looks at like Bitsby Trippin and the technicals and sort of other channels that have like really good sort of like very grounded business advice, I think.
Matt over the technicals. I mean, here's the thing. Matt he drives around in a Lamborghini. Newsflash, he's the first to admit it. Newsflash, that Lamborghini did not come from mining.
Yeah.
It came from running a different successful business and then buying back his life so that he could focus on things like mining with the spare time.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, if you just even the way when he does his financial breakdowns and stuff, you realize that it's like a pilot program for him. Mining is sort of like he's trying to figure out what's possible, right? And then so he's approaching it like a business, and that's what I love about his whole approach to the whole thing, breaking down all the revenue from the crypto-centric activities, and that's good. That's a very good role model there. What I was going to say about just running it like a business. So for those of you that are even approaching it like how big to go, like if you're a mid-scale miner, like you literally have a warehouse full of gear, you definitely need a business structure, and you should definitely be doing modeling and stuff. But if you have a small amount of rigs, like a handful of rigs that you're running in the garage, you might still consider, okay, I'm no longer going to run this like a sole proprietorship or whatever. I'm going to actually run this like a business and create a business entity. And why? Again, this is not legal advice, but the mechanisms available to you for depreciation of your gear, for how you can do your taxes and stuff, are much more sophisticated. Those are something that I encourage you to explore with your CPA if you're not clear, or to educate yourself on. But here in the United States, it's not particularly expensive to create, like, for example, an LLC. It's a very cost efficient business structure to do. And then you pay a few $100 extra a year to your CPA to do your taxes, because you do have to do your taxes twice, once for yourself and once for the business. But if you anticipate having any amount of something on the order of, let's say, 5 figures worth of money invested in gear, having that level of sophistication, applying that level of sophistication to depreciating your stuff and your gear, and actually figuring out the most tax efficient ways of calculating your income against those depreciating assets and stuff like that, and your expenses, your ongoing expenses, it's well worth the effort. Like there's a lot of the books on wealth building, if you've ever read any of them, basically advise running businesses, even for sort of like even more mundane sort of activities, to improve your tax efficiency. This isn't even something that's revenue generating the way that mining can be. So anyway, educate yourself.
Right. That's awesome. So, hey, we thanks so much for bringing that up. He says, thank you, Mr. Longbeard. That answered my question. So, and guys, that's the thing. We definitely have, I think sometimes we have more answers than questions on this show, right? Where it's kind of like, we're just going to keep talking.
Yeah.
But in this case, like, it probably can't be overstated how important it is to take a methodical approach to mining. And then, of course, to anything you're doing within crypto, right? Whether it is investing or it's now Masternodes, right? Like, the Masternodes are really... clearly, that's like a big focus for you right now.
You're thwarting my whole well, think about it. Like, it's the down market is a good time for Masternodes, right? It's a great time to get the collateral that you've had your eye on for a while for a better price. Now, at the end of the day, most of the coins that have Masternodes actually still have mining too. So it's not an ecosystem that can exist without miners. There's only a handful right now that use proof of stake instead of actual mining to secure the blockchains. So, so they all work together, and I think a lot of miners should probably be interested in Masternodes, simply because if they've been mining the coins that have Masternodes, they will mine their way into having enough collateral to run a Masternode. So that's pretty cool for them.
Yeah, I mean, definitely with the Zencash secure nodes, I think there were a lot of miners that if they had been mining prior to the bull run or moving into the bull run, or if you have a mid-scale mine, then you may be sitting on enough collateral from Zencash to spin up a secure node, not a super node, but a secure node.
Oh, and that's a really cool project, man. I mean, they're very deliberately approaching that. They have a solid roadmap, and they're approaching it like a business, right? Which that's actually one of the advantages of that sort of, like, I don't know what you'd call them, like 1.5 generation or second generation kind of crypto projects. I mean, the Zencash team has a way more ambitious goals than, say, sort of like a crypto 2.0 type of project. But yeah, they just really got their act together in terms of the way they're approaching it. So I know some people don't agree with the sort of dev fee kind of approach, but it seems to be serving a lot of those, like, not so scammy Masternode altcoins pretty well in terms of just keeping their foundations healthy without having to do ICOs and stuff like that. It's like they just, it's an ongoing thing, right? Like it funds itself.
Yeah, one thing that I'm going to bring up, so Roderick's comment from the comment section, and hey, Roderick, thanks so much for always being so engaged and really like you drop real knowledge in the comment section. Appreciate you like asking legit questions, giving legit answers, and really shooting straight. And he says Masternodes, in his view, it's a one-shot miss. If you do miss, like that's it, you've blown your wad, right? Like because you have assets that are tied up in that collateral. Like if the value of that coin goes down, you're a bag holder. You've got to figure out some way. Like the exit strategy is just a little bit different versus mining, right? And especially like my audience knows I'm bullish on GPU mining specifically because you can always turn your rig at a different coin. Mm-hmm. It's not like an ASIC where you're like, oh no, Bitcoin is not profitable, but also like nothing else that's mining SHA-256 could possibly be profitable on this ASIC.
Well, and in answer to that, I was going to use the ASIC example as a sort of counterpoint, but you already took away my argument.
Touche.
Yeah, you already weakened it. I mean, GPU mining, I don't know if it'll ever die. I mean, when the ASICs started to come out like seriously for Bitcoin, and then there was obviously it wasn't going to let up. And then by the time the sort of script ASICs came out, let's say for example, and then they could do script N as well. And so now we have ones that can do, is it Ethash, whatever the one that Ethereum does.
Dagger Hashimoto. Everyone calls it Ethash, but it's like I mean, I wind up calling it Dagger Hashimoto because it sort of morphed from Dagger Hashimoto into Ethash. Like that's in common parlance, but it's but it is the Hashimoto algorithm plus Dagger. It is Dagger Hashimoto. Like
so just to be more accurate, I mean, that's maybe the best way to put it. But as the ASICs have come out for more and more things, and now the growing realization that anything can have an ASIC built for it. It's not so my argument for GPU mining isn't so much about the centralization issue. It's more about, as a miner, do you want to have something that's more like general compute capability in your stable of equipment that you can then direct at different coins? I kind of approach it. I've always been a little bit more mercenary, I guess you'd say, about the mining thing, just in terms of like, as a miner, you have to look out for yourself. Yeah, you're going to have your favorite coins that you're going to want to mine and stuff. But when those ASICs started coming out, when script ASICs came out and Litecoin didn't try to switch their algorithm, and that was a sort of early memory hard algorithm where it was sort of clear, oh, well, yeah, you just put more memory on the chip. I mean, I didn't see that the end game was ultimately going to get to where it is now. Now it's pretty painfully clear that, you can build an ASIC for anything.
No, totally. And it's kind of foolish to believe that it's not going to happen. Like there's financial incentive for people to create commodity hardware. And then there's also financial incentive on the side of certain coin founders and project leads or project teams to create a stable of miners that have sunk costs that in their minds tie them to the project. So like there are multiple forces acting against you as a miner when it comes to like wanting to go with GPUs, but sort of being corralled towards ASICs.
Right. And I'm trying to tie this back into that masternode question. And that's a good sort of place to connect it. It's that, obviously the coin project it's all about game theory and balancing all of the forces, right? The coin project wants miners to be locked in so that they'll continue to mine, so that they'll always have a mining that people can't jump around as easily as they can with GPU mining. But from a miner's perspective, it's not really ideal to be locked into a small set of algorithms that that your ASICs can do. And then of course, I don't know who's seen the recent news about Bitmain also doing an IPO, right? Like they're aiming for an $18 billion IPO, which would set their valuation at something like 50 billion or something, 40 billion.
It's just nuts, dude.
Yeah. And but the thing is, the article I read, which was on Forbes, said that they're somehow not coupled to the greater crypto business. Like that's the way that they positioned it. This is Forbes' kind of take on it, that Bitmain isn't tied to the fates of the crypto industry as a whole. And that's probably not how I would have worded it. I would have been like, well, no, it's more like they take their profits up front. I mean, they charge you the maximum they can for their ASIC, and it's your problem as to whether or not you're going to ROI on it, right?
Oh my gosh, yeah, it's terrible. I mean, if we were to pull up the Bitmain site right now, and like the biggest disruptor of the GPU mining scene is their E3, right? It is their Dagger Hashimoto miner. But if you look at it right now and you run the numbers, it's like, nah, man, your break-even point is just super messed up. It's not that you'd be lucky to break even with it as much as it's hard to figure out now, based on network hash rate increasing for Dagger Hashimoto, whether or not you actually legitimately will be able to break even. It begs the question, if they could sell it at this price, like they're not losing their shirts over selling it at this price, but they were literally selling it at 3x that price just a few weeks ago.
Yeah. Well,
like how do they, like all the money they've got this fully dialed in. They know like what the product release cycle needs to be like in order to extract the maximum amount of money from miners without, like you said, hardly giving them anything in return other than like the hope of, good luck breaking even, maybe.
Yeah, the bulk of the sunk costs is in the engineering and also the tape out, the original early runs of the chips. At this point, so for those of you who aren't already aware of this, Bitmain makes more money than NVIDIA does. Okay, so as far as an ASIC engineering firm goes, they have as much resources as NVIDIA does. Now, they may not have the same IP in terms of all of the cool GPU technology that NVIDIA has been building up for years and years and years, but in terms of their ability to execute on ASIC engineering and sort of go to market plan strategy, they've completely got that on lock, right? So, and also they've got the money, because I guarantee you their margins are better than NVIDIA's as well. They have the funds to essentially pay for the best position, because the big foundries that make the chips, like TSMC and those others, you can basically buy your way in line. You could put yourself further ahead into a more advantageous time, because they keep those factories busy all the time. They don't have downtime unless they get a virus like they did recently and they have to turn everything off. But I mean, so they can buy the most advantageous slot to get to expedite their sort of fabrication of their parts, and then they can get them to market quickly. So, I mean, in a lot of ways, it's like they're really sitting in a catbird seat right now, just in terms of like they're an actual existential threat to companies like NVIDIA. Anyway, I still haven't answered the original question about Masternodes versus whatever mining. Was that the question?
Yeah, no, I think actually, so I mean, we've had some counterpoint, we've gone back and forth, and I think probably you have on some level. But so let me see if I can. I'll borrow Richard Hart's phrase here, and let me see if I can steel man the argument that as I've heard it so far. Right now, in a down market, right in a bearish market, you can get access to collateral at an attractive price in order to jump into Masternodes. And with that, hey man, who can disagree? That's perfectly logical. Makes perfect sense. But what else you got?
Well, if you believed that cryptos were going to zero, you wouldn't be mining either. And also, the reason I even spent any time at all talking about hardware was and bringing up ASICs, and that was and GPUs versus ASICs, was that if you're on ASICs and you get in a market like this and you're not profitable, you're screwed. Like boat anchor, hey, there you go. Something there's like a boat anchor. Your boat anchor actually did cost more, or are you saying that you would like to use your miner as a boat anchor? But anyway, your miner, an ASIC or a dedicated piece of hardware, is effectively worthless. I don't know if anyone else has noticed this, how essentially the value of mining gear tracks the value of the crypto. It's always priced against, there's got to be some way to plot this out, but it's always essentially priced against the future profitability of the hardware. It's never priced against its, I don't know what you'd call it, its actual physical utility price. It's like constituent parts. It's always priced relative to its profitability at some point in the future. And of course, difficulty has been rising lately. So, but if you factor in difficulty and you factor in profitability, the hardware is always going to essentially be anchored more to that, speaking of anchors, than it is going to be to its actual underlying physical component part. GPUs, on the other hand, they kind of don't track that. ASICs do. GPUs don't so much. they do get their prices do go up when mining goes up, simply because the supply and demand gets squeezed a little bit, or the supply gets has way too much demand on it, basically, and then you get a squeeze. But ASICs, absolutely, man. They're because or at least this was very much the case in the past. It might be now to the point where all of these ASICs manufacturers are able to crank them out quickly enough that they're just essentially flooding the market with them, and there's this has become decoupled, unlike what it was. But so the whole thing about
I love that we're talking about Masternodes right now. while DJ Dave is I mean he was at an electronics trade show, a little bit of background, in China, like right now, like literally presently, and he found the E3 found an E3 ASIC for like what it should cost, right? Commodity price.
Yeah, right.
And he just he dropped that nuke in the comments. So we're all like, oh, bro, it's totally like let's talk more about this.
Well, and think about that. If you can find it at one of those the Chinese Shenzhen sort of electronics markets at commodity price, that means that's what people in China are buying it for. So,
oh yeah. Well, I mean, we didn't.
Where they get power practically for free because it's all stoked with coal and massively subsidized.
Yeah, I mean, you got to do what works for you guys. That's kind of the bottom line. Yeah, you got to do what works for you. And right now, yeah, if we have some of the collateral necessary for Masternodes kind of testing bottom support, I think that's maybe kind of the tough thing right now for a lot of people, just kind of figuring out, like, do I enter the market now? Like, how do I do this? I'm sure that there are people who know how to do this stuff. Like, I'm not going to pretend to know how. Guys, the disclaimer is totally legit. I'll be one of the first people to admit ignorance where I have ignorance. So, like, understanding when you should be entering the market, I think there may be people who are, they're feeling kind of gun shy when it comes to purchasing the necessary collateral, even though prices are down, and it's probably a good idea, like conceptually, knowing like if I hold out like 3 more days, another week, like what's going on here, and you can't be fully certain, but I know there are a lot of people who are looking at the market and trying to make sense of it, and they maybe don't have much guidance there.
Well, think about just like relative, because I can't remember, was it an either or question, or was the question asking permission to buy, or not permission, but like an endorsement to buy in?
No, I think what I'm wondering is like, and this is just me, I'm not seeing from the comments, but trying to figure out, like, is it just a question of like following the gut and then having enough guts to say like, all right, well, I want to get started now, and prices are as low as I need them to be just to make some kind of an executive decision, get the collateral, and get started with a masternode. Mm-hmm. Or like was mentioned before by Roderick, do I kind of look at that and figure out what the commensurate capex would be for my mining rigs? Which, again, DJ, thanks so much for creating utter chaos with the announcement of that ASIC that you found. But do I take what I would have spent on the necessary collateral to go with a masternode and drop it on a GPU, or an array of GPUs? And now NVIDIA, the leaks, I brought that up on the screen behind us. The leaks from NVIDIA, they are starting to get validated because of the USPTO filings from NVIDIA. Like, we know what some model names are. We have some info on them. There's almost nothing left to leak other than real world hands-on data that we can get once we start testing them. So like, there's all this stuff that's happening. And I know a lot of people are like, oh, do I dare enter the market right now, for fear of having something just a little bit more optimized come along in a week or two?
Oh,
what do you even say to that?
Buying hardware?
Buying hardware or buying collateral for Masternode, like whatever. Like, I decide.
And my argument against the hardware versus, because I mean, look, I got into crypto from mining. I don't think I've ever bought any. I've only bought a little bit of crypto, and the mindset of a miner is that, like, I think I sort of understand it, which it's like, it feels like a lower risk way to do it because you've got the hardware, at least, even if everything goes wrong.
Well, and that's one thing, that is your collateral against a loan, if say you're taking out a traditional loan. But I think also there are a lot of folks, like we were talking like working with a CPA or with somebody that is qualified to give you the financial advice, but talking about different investment vehicles, business investment vehicles, and strategies like hedging, right? And hedging instruments. I think to people who are looking at a large hardware purchase, they're maybe able to wrap their heads around how they would hedge for a large hardware purchase versus, say, buying the collateral for a masternode, which, I mean, the actual material cost there, your VPS is ultra cheap, right? Like the actual costs are really low. The biggest cost is the collateral.
Oh yeah.
So figuring out like how do you hedge that?
And it is more like, I mean, you pretty much you can't do masternodes and also like short the crypto either. You're essentially saying I'm taking a long position on this, right? So that's another reason why sort of trying to get the best deal possible on the collateral is important, because you're not going to be. Well, I mean, I guess you could also very well could take out a short position if you're talking about hedging. You very well could take out a short position on either the same crypto or another one if you could find an exchange that does that essentially balances your long position on your collateral, and then that way all of your masternode profits would essentially be in the clear. And if you did run into a situation where it completely tanked, it would actually cover you, right? That's how you would hedge that. That's a kind of situation where it's like, I'm not as sophisticated a trader as that. And that's one of the things I've realized too about when it comes to sort of like crypto miners and sort of there's people who trade and speculate in crypto who spend all their time truly trying to master all of the tools available as a trader and learning technical analysis and even sort of macro kind of concepts in terms of watching the bigger picture, but then also doing their technical analysis and trying to figure out good timing for trades and stuff. That's a different kind of mindset, right, from a lot of miners, it seems to me. It's certainly, I don't have a high level of sophistication when it comes to trading. I'm more of like a hodler, basically. Like I think a lot of people in this game are kind of like that, right? But then there's also people that are very active at trading. I've been trying lately to try to learn technical analysis a little bit better, if only to sort of like set my mind at better ease, like to be able to like just live with the price action and be able to okay, like I feel like I understand it at least, even if I'm not going to act on it. So yeah, I mean, I think there's no leverage mark for masternode coins. Okay, so that's what the Sarjan says, and that might be true. You might have to sort of pick a proxy, like, right, say I'm gonna just use Bitcoin or some market that does have some tools for hedging, and then that would just basically, you'd use that as your safety net if that was your mentality, or you could just go really long on your masternode coins and just not worry about it too much, right? Just think, okay, I'm on this ride, and just never put in more than you are willing to lose, right? Even if it's coins that you've mined yourself, don't hang on for too long. Create like a stop loss, as it were, right? Just pick your target, and if everything goes wrong, then that's when you can sell.
Yeah, awesome, guys. And this is not, it's not advice, but if anything, what you're hearing from Aaron and me both is always be smart, be cautious, and be informed. And if you find yourself being price sensitive to like any of these purchases, like would it really break you to go get professional advice?
Right.
And if it would, then maybe you're not really in a position to be playing the game.
No responsible financial advisor would ever tell you to invest in crypto. They probably should lose their license if they do. And it's just my opinion, but
fair enough.
I mean,
let me address a couple of quick questions, and just really briefly in the audience, I got a couple of the comment section. AZ LRM Aozao. Sorry, Arizona person. You're asking about like you got 1,500, and I made the joke before in the comments about like I've got 1,500 roughly monthly that's coming in that I can divert towards some kind of crypto revenue generating or something like crypto generating pursuit. What should I do, masternodes or mining? And I said, well, it depends on which brother you ask, right? Like,
yeah,
depends on which brother you ask. And now I'm getting a couple of questions about best GPUs. And as you guys know, for me, the last several days, last week or so, I've been very bullish on P104, which is a mining-specific edition of the GTX 1070 that performs actually better than the GTX 1080 in real world. So it's an extremely good and performant card. So that's Yeah, but they're saying what else is there? As you guys know from my spreadsheets, you've got the RX 580 or any of the Polaris cards from AMD, really. So the Mining Edition RX 470, also really good card. And then you have the GTX 1060 or the P106. But the P106, guys, realistically in real world, doesn't perform that much better than the GTX 1060. If you're evaluating those two cards, always go for the GTX 1060 because you'll get better resale. Not higher necessarily, but just percentage of whatever you spent, you're going to probably do better.
So I want to sort of clarify what I just said too. So it's more about risk containment. Okay. So if you were to go, it's not about not investing. It's about not investing what you can't afford to lose. And so this was an article I was reading on one of the financial, it was like Seeking Alpha, or one of the more aggressive sort of investment blogs. Or actually it might have even been Forbes or something, or blog post on there, but they were talking to a guy who was a financial advisor, and he was saying, it's a sliding scale, right? Like it's more about not overextending yourself, and that's what's so tricky about like when you're a miner or when you're sort of like really going all in on Masternodes. I know people now that essentially live on Masternode earnings. So it's kind of like a dream, isn't it? Like to think that you could be in that position. But these people got into Masternodes early, and they're really sophisticated in terms of technical analysis and trading and stuff like that. So it's more about picking the right amount. So this guy was saying, "Oh yeah, if you're bearish on crypto, it should be like 1% of your wealth should be in it because it's so asymmetrical in terms of the potential upside." And then he says, but if you're super bullish on it, it should be like, it was a really big number. It was like 7% or something, right? 6%.
Jeez. Yeah, that's a surprise.
So anyway, what I'm trying to convey with this is that when I say no responsible financial advisor, it's mostly because they would probably look at if you're talking to most square sort of typical financial advisors, they're probably going to look at your situation 9 times out of 10, unless you're independently wealthy, and they're going to say, well, you can't afford to lose this money, so I'm not going to stick my neck out and advise you to go for this really speculative investment.
So Roger brings up a really good point, and that is like checking to see what you're like, figuring out, getting your sea legs with Masternodes, and figuring out like how many experiments did it take for these guys who are living passively on Masternode earnings. Where's the trail of like Masternode bodies that they've left behind? Like where are the skeletons in the closet, the mistakes, where do they live, and what kind of mistakes did they have to go through?
I mean, my personal thing is I don't even trust Masternodes that don't have like over at least a couple $100,000 of volume a day, or even like $1 million of value a day, because they're just not established enough.
And that's the case that should be the case, guys. To anybody that's like, yeah, Masternodes, well, I'll listen to it, but really I'm into mining. If anybody's like firmly in the mining camp, you guys should know also, like if you don't have significant daily volume on coins that you're going to mine, like, dude, what's your exit strategy for coins that you're not going to hang on to, or that you may want to trade? There are just too many horror stories. I've got my BBS horror story, right? BBS coin, where I saw this phenomenal opportunity and I nice hash bombed it, but then like was stuck holding a bag at lower than a Satoshi.
Yeah. And people have heard me talk about mining coin launches, right? I was a bag holder on a lot of those. So Mossy's like Dash players one. Mossy, I remember when Amanda B came around my town here on a little road trip and talking up Dash and Masternodes and stuff. I wasn't there. I watched the video later and I'm like, oh, she was in town. But man, yeah, Dash people who got into Dash early are sitting pretty on their Masternodes.
Nice. Well, and Amanda B herself is kind of like she's sort of risen to like legend status. Where can you even listen to her speak anymore? She's not on YouTube, right?
I think she still does. Does she? I think she still does a show from time to time. But
okay, yeah, that's cool. I don't know. Be like, hey, Amanda B, you should totally be on our Sunday show.
Yeah, invite her. See if she'll go on.
So awesome. Okay, we're getting a bunch of questions related to all this stuff, guys. So, and we're almost at an hour, man. Should we try to do like a tidy hour-long show today? What would that be like if we actually only broadcast for an hour?
Yeah, or if we could just ask if there's anybody who has a specific question. I mean, I kind of talked around. I would never advise anybody. Seth gave you advice on what hardware to get.
Well, and that's just it. Let me clarify. I've got a spreadsheet that helps you make an informed decision for yourself. Do your own research, and on my spreadsheet, the most salient model numbers are the RX 580 by NVIDIA or by AMD and the GTX 1060 by NVIDIA. But then also the mining editions of those cards as well. That's just what my data can tell you at a glance. It can't tell you whether or not that's the right choice for you.
Trish Apps wants to buy Bitmain after the IPO, so not during the IPO. You want to see how it stabilizes? Is that what you're getting at? Because that's kind of how I would feel about it too. I wouldn't want to go out and overpay right at the IPO. But then again, sometimes you miss out on that. I remember when Red Hat went public, and man, it just shot right up from the actual IPO offer, the original price.
Nice. Well, I mean, there might be a little bit of a difference in that, like, Linux literally powers the world as we know it.
It wasn't clear at that time, though. That was sort of right at the sort of the fat part of the .com implosion. So it was just like implicated in all that. Never mind that it was sort of like going to be the next wave of infrastructure for the internet.
Yeah. Sir John is asking you about Cosmos and running a validator node.
Cosmos. I should look into that. Because are those like I'm writing this down so I don't forget because somebody's already mentioned this before.
Yeah, maybe guys, we might have to do a follow up on that in a week.
Because right now, being a block producer, let's say on EOS, it can be quite lucrative. Or if you manage to grab a bunch of RAM cheap early on, I don't think they realize that. It's actually one of the things I've realized by watching it after that whole situation. People will speculate on anything, so they inadvertently or maybe intentionally created a commodity that people could speculate on, which was the RAM in their system, and now it's like super expensive. It's like overpriced. It's like hurting the network's ability to be adopted.
Yeah, awesome. So Sir John is he's really thinks you're going to want to learn about this. Awesome, guys. Yeah. What other questions do you have for the two of us before we wrap the show tonight? While you guys do that, I'm going to pop open one site that you should already know about and pop up another site that for right now you should already know about. Well, some other stuff. But tell us what questions you guys have. I love that it auto-suggests mine, your .biz. Thank you, Amazon. You got it right. You're doing it right. Also, mine, your $biz. And guys, shameless plug, mine, your $biz. We are expanding functionality. If you go to the shop there, we should be launching our merch store very, very soon. So for our international customers that wanted to buy and for whom Amazon did not ship, we should be overcoming that very, very soon, as well as getting into some of our hardware. So I'm really excited about that. So host devices, riserless host devices. In the meantime, like you're saying, what do you do when collateral is cheap for Masternodes? Get collateral. That's your infrastructure. What do you do in mining when there's uncertainty about which GPU to get? In my opinion, evaluate host devices. Figure out what is going to be the best platform for you to put your next GPU purchases into and ease the burden of scaling. But yeah, Faded is saying he still needs a shirt for the set. I think Faded's going to get that. He's going to get we've got the I Love Your Face shirt right here. He picked that up. He picked it up in chroma key green so that my face can float underneath his face. But awesome, guys. What are the questions you have for us? Aaron, I really think we should start doing this live. We've been pre-recording. It's been great. We got to start doing this live every week, I think.
It's more fun, actually, interacting with the audience. So I think you mentioned to me, Seth, that some of in the Discord, people have been asking about Masternode setup. I mean, is it... Yes. So the way I look at it, it's probably more than anything like Linux education. Is that sort of maybe more along the lines of what people are feeling they lack? Because depending on the node... it can be extremely tedious to set up. Zen cache nodes are among the most complicated to set up because you have to set up a lot of external things. But then most other master nodes are essentially dash forks, and they're pretty similar. So the setup is pretty similar. But I think what probably intimidates most people is the Linux part. I'm waiting to see if anybody chimes in here. Nobody's said anything. Oh, the best place to get VPSs. The cheapest place is a place over in it's a French company actually called
Is Vultr?
Huh? What? No, it's not Vultr. That's an Australian company actually. They're pretty cost effective. They're called Scaleway. They have like ridiculous prices, but the reason why is because they're not very featureful. It's like very much just like, here's a server. Like it's nothing like the bigger clouds like Google or Amazon's clouds where they have like millions of different features and stuff that you can do for building infrastructure for different stuff. They basically just give you a computer like a VPS, and that's it. So they're really good, well priced. And then of course there's a DigitalOcean, which is really popular domestic here in the United States company, and then Vultr.
I think Linode is also a really popular choice among developers.
Which one?
Linode.
Linode. They're pretty good too. Most of these, what they all have in common is that they're, cheap isn't always cheaper. That's a good point, AZ. It's
guys, let me tell you why I went with Vultr before I did the coin fork with Rocksteady on Turtle. I evaluated a couple of different ways, and it seems like there's price parity between a lot of the different a lot of different provision systems you can get. And I saw, okay, well, price being pretty much the same, what do I want from a VPS? And with a VPS, I think I want more choice in terms of location. And Vultr just had more choice. Like there were more data centers that I could choose to spin up my devices from, so my VPSs from. And so that for me was why I went with Vultr. And then, as a person that live streams a lot, it was like, oh, cool, they also have an affiliate program, so it's kind of cool that can refer people. Mm-hmm. That's nice. I'm sure the others do too, but that's why I went with Vultr in the first place. It was just the being able to choose and spin up VPSs like in various different spots. So for seed nodes on a new coin fork or for Masternodes or whatever else.
Yep, and DigitalOcean has like 4 or 5 different locations.
I want to say that Vultr has like 15.
Yeah, I know, because they have like Australian locations and European locations, and so they have a lot of different locations. So what you're going to find is these sort of low end VPS provide, well, not low end, that's maybe not the best way to put it, but the sort of just the simpler VPS providers that just provide like a VPS and not like AWS or Google with like these millions of different serverless infrastructures and containers and millions of other things. They're all equivalent. They have an equivalent business model, similar business models and equivalent pricing, which is by similar business models, I mean, they give you like fixed size machines with a fixed size of storage, one core, this amount of RAM and this much storage for a fixed price. So they all have a similar business model and they all have similar pricing. So, so far I have not, I've mostly used myself. I've mostly used DigitalOcean and Scaleway, and I've been happy with both. Seth's using Vultr. So there you go.
Yeah, Wee has a question for you. He's asking VanX SolidX decision August, but the final is February. Just my opinion, these big boys like banks keep talking smack about BTC so that people panic, then can buy low on BTC. How low do you think BTC will be, or how low do you imagine it could go?
Well, I mean, I would suggest that you look at some of the technical analysis channels on YouTube, but a lot of them are saying the sort of bottom support's going to be around in the 4,000s even. It could go as low as that, 4,700, 4,600, but I don't know. I'm just listening to other technical analysis people who are saying stuff like that.
I'll say, guys, also, as far as technical analysis goes and like subscribing to somebody's advice, there are some people who are really, they're really dialed in. And frankly, if you want some of the best advice, it's like anything. The best advice is going to cost you. So there's some people.
I personally am. I hope it doesn't go quite that low, but you never know. And I agree. this could be a lot of FUD or price manipulation trying to depress the price, but that just sounds conspiratorial. I don't necessarily think that's the case. If you look at the previous sort of big bull runs that Bitcoin has had, the sort of consolidation period that occurs afterwards, or the sort of like the retracements that occur after, we're kind of still in line with historical adjustment after these giant parabolic moves. So it's not, it's don't panic. It's not anything I necessarily think to be panicked about. I mean, Bitcoin is relatively early and is still growing. I think the biggest problem that this last bull run may have had is it might have brought in a lot of people who FOMO'd in at really bad prices, got so badly burned, and that volume was higher than it has been in the past, that essentially that was more people getting burned, that there might be a lot of people with a really bitter taste in their mouth, and it might depress like future price action. But who knows? I don't know. Bitcoin's a completely new thing. It's just like this global phenomenon, right? I almost don't like to speculate on the price too much, just because it's like, to be honest, these giant parabolic moves are unfortunate because they just mess everything up. It would be much better if it was just like steady and and a little bit more stable, rather than having these ridiculous parabolic moves every few years, every year or two, because it just makes people distrust it more. It doesn't make them trust it. It makes them more sort of, they believe more of the hype about the negative things about Bitcoin. So
nice. So hey guys, what other questions do you have for us about and I really appreciate that. So Trish Apps mentions totally switching between trading and mining is like switching my brain between two different languages sometimes.
Yeah.
And it's tough, but I think one of the reasons that Aaron and I really wanted to talk about mining and masternodes and do a little bit of market commentary, like mix into all of that, is that, I mean, not any one of these pursuits is an island. They're all so incredibly dependent on each other. We've got to broaden our ability to talk about all these topics if we want to get better at any one of them.
Yeah, the only reason the price action matters is because it does sort of becomes the demand for the mining and the masternodes and the ecosystems and everything. It's like the visible part. It is sort of, it's only like the tip of the iceberg in terms of the whole ecosystem, really, right? But it's like what everybody, all the normies pay attention to, that part. So it's probably, and of course, since it affects, as a miner, it affects your ability to actually survive, like actually ROI on your gear and make some profits. I mean, it's important, right, to what you're doing. So understanding, maybe, I mean, if you look at it that way, actually, you're better equipped if you can do a little bit of technical analysis, or at least like plug into like some of the sort of more macro kind of analysis stuff people are doing. It might make you feel a little bit more comfortable about your longer term decisions as you get more familiar with everything. Like I said, it's doing your own research is tough in this whole space, because it's not like a traditional securities type of thing where you can look at quarterly earnings and you can look at growth, and you don't have those kind of metrics per se in the crypto space. It's all about it's all driven by mostly by speculation, but also there's a certain amount of usage associated with some of that speculation as well. So yeah, it's a little harder to put a pin in it.
Yeah. So hey guys, we had a couple of comments that were kind of like I think kind of randomly interspersed about like ranking different coins based on GitHub commits, and let me just follow up on that for the record, just talking about it. Part of the reason that when you see me look at different projects and their project pages is Trish, thank you for the apology. Said here hoarder, and yeah, neither of us here is named hoarder. Yeah. So it's like, I mean, it's not the worst place to call a man the wrong name, but it's a little weird. Yeah. But jumping back, as far as somebody saying ranking projects based on GitHub commit history, that might not be the best possible way, because it's hard to know how a team how they're doing their development. They might be doing a lot of their development in local repos and and aggregating changes for like a single big commit, pushing a single big commit. But also, and I made the comment that I can fake a really frequent commit history by saving every single spelling change that I do in documentation. I could do like localization and add like 15 different new languages, and it looks like, and if depending on how I push that commit, I can make it look like I've got this like really, frequent commit history that I'm making all these changes, yeah, you can look to see exactly what was changed. That makes sense. But if you just look at the overview and frequency, then you can fake it and make it look like you're actually doing work when you're just pushing commit.
So I think it was Mossy said that Mossy said the BTC is fine. Real shitcoins will die within 2 years. Well, we've talked about this a bit before.
Well, the thing is also people thought that 2 years ago.
Blockchains never die. But there may be a lot of zombie blockchains that are like still shitcoins in 2 years. I agree. So here's one of the interesting things. It's like I'm not really entirely a Bitcoin maximalist, but it's really, I think, risky to be in this game and to not acknowledge the fact that Bitcoin is the godfather. It's the daddy coin of all coins. I mean, it's the reserve currency of crypto. If you want to move stuff between exchanges, if all the trade pairs, not all, but most of the trade pairs are built against Bitcoin. I mean, and then there'll be like a small basket of other coins that have trade pairs, but it's typically the trade partner or trade pair on pairings on an exchange. And I think it's not realistic to think that it's not going to continue to be a major component of the whole ecosystem. So all the smaller coins, their use cases have to be really well defined. Seth's talked a lot about this in his interviews. I mean, they really have to bring forward, okay, what's your use case? And you've heard me, I've been sort of nonchalant about coin projects, small coin projects not even needing to have a point. Because it's like, the way I see it is sometimes when it comes to things like shit coins, it's like, given that Bitcoin is the sort of godfather, granddaddy of all crypto coins, it takes a lot to disrupt that, right? It's like, it has to be a really strong contender in order to actually rock the boat compared to, say, why don't you just use Bitcoin? I mean, Bitcoin has a lot of sort of weaknesses as a money-like thing, and that's what Bitcoin Cash was meant to address, right? But it still has a 10-minute block time, so it's not perfect either. So when it comes to like, oh, we got something like a faster block time, or we got something like Lightning on Bitcoin, I mean, you have to look at all these different facets and try to figure out, okay, what makes a lot of sense. So yeah, I think the smaller coins, they really have to have compelling traction in terms of people using them for interesting things, or at least, very least, fun things. Otherwise, they're just going to continue to be, I don't know what to call them. They're sort of these speculative trade pairs against Bitcoin that they're a lot of fun to play with on exchanges, but they may never have much market cap compared to Bitcoin. I think it's not too pessimistic to be pragmatic about it that way, right? Say, well, like, something that's got this tiny little share of market cap is somehow going to grow to eclipse Bitcoin eventually. I mean, now I'm starting to sound like a Bitcoin maximalist, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, to your point, like it's hard not to, like, we all have to face that reality. Like you're saying, as the reserve currency, Bitcoin is why we're doing all of this. It's the reason any of this stuff exists. Yeah. Even Ethereum, that has this really vibrant ecosystem that's being built around it, right? And the tokens, it just simply wouldn't be here. I mean, maybe ideas. So you hear me say often, ideas want to be free, right? So a lot of people tend to like happen upon the same stuff at around the same time. But I don't foresee Ethereum taking the shape that it did take without Bitcoin just leading the way, just being here. So. The idea of there being a flippening seems really unlikely, and the idea of altcoins, especially like the absolute junk, like completely disappearing, it's crazy. I don't think either's going to happen. Yeah,
it's a weird stalemate in a way. And there's just already coins that are better money than Bitcoin. I mean, arguably Bitcoin Cash, Litecoin for sure. If you're just talking about Satoshi-like first generation cryptocurrencies, Dash is like an incredibly strong contender. Like a lot of the Masternode coins, in fact, and any of the Masternode coins that have or even non-Masternode coins, any of the privacy oriented coins like Monero or Zencash or Zcoin or Zcash, the names are too similar.
Right. But the thing is, I mean, there are some commonly forked coins, and the commonly forked coins are Bitcoin, Ethereum, Zcash, Monero. Mm-hmm. Outside of that, there's not. I mean, there are people who are innovating, right? Zencash, they're doing great with these secure nodes and master nodes. And
Dash is like, there's a lot of haters on Dash just because its genesis was kind of a little foggy. But you know, it's in a lot of ways it's a better Litecoin, I guess is one way of looking at it too. The Masternodes, I mean, I don't think the privacy features are already in some ways outdated. So, but they've made some attempts at having privacy. The fact that they have Masternodes though makes for like the instance and allows for an on-chain scale. I wouldn't call it scalability, but faster on-chain transactions. And of course, they have a whole roadmap of new features. I mean, their goal is to become like the cryptocurrency that grandma could use. And a lot of crypto projects have a similar goal, but that's been their mantra for years now. So,
and that's just it. I think a lot of the other coin projects say it to sort of like, but they do a lip service to the whole educating grandma initiative. And my audience knows we've been talking about that a lot lately, where it's like without educating grandma, like we're not going to get real adoption for another like 15 years if we don't educate grandma now. Like we're going to have to literally wait for a full generation of people to like literally die.
Yeah. So I completely didn't address that statement except for putting my own beliefs on the record. So yeah, do your own homework.
Yeah. Well, hey, what do you say? Should we call it a show here? We've got blockchain or blockfarm.net up behind us right now. This is the opportunity to talk a little more. I think this is why people wanted to know a little more about setting up a Zencash supernode, was because they're aware of the show that you're working on BlockFarm.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Okay. So yeah, I mean that's BlockFarm's coming along. It's going to be at least a couple of weeks before I have anything more to share, probably on that front. But that's why I was asking about if people wanted maybe like a quick, like, I don't know, Linux lesson or something like that. Yeah, at some point I was talking with Seth earlier about, I'm not really sure if trying to do a video walkthrough of setting up a Masternode is going to be fruitful for most people, because it might just be more confusing than like the written directions that already exist. But maybe doing like little mini how-tos on like VPS basics or Linux basics or some of that kind of stuff, I don't know, might be helpful to people.
Right. I was just thinking about it, and like we're getting a bunch of comments that are riffing on the idea of an entire generation dying before we can get full adoption of crypto. Mm-hmm. We talked about this the other day. There's a huge problem that's in front of us with especially people who are like as bullish on the singularity as Ray Kurzweil, but mm-hmm. people who think that it may be possible in our lifetime to choose whether or not you want to die. Like you may be able to live on forever.
Yeah, so like
what happens if people like say yes to the singularity but still don't learn about crypto? What are we gonna do then?
Right. Well, I always like to say, what kind of money would robots use? And so, it's probably going to be some kind of blockchain representation of commodities, or literally like credits that are like Bitcoin, like blockchain backed shell money, right? For lack of a better kind of money. Probably be some kind of resource back. I mean, it'll go back to some kind of bartering, because tracking actually every single resource, the only thing that'll be worth anything would be commodities, because everything will collapse to the value of the commodity price once super strong automation is available. But I don't know,
Nice. Faded just gave us the cheat sheet to all things Debian, at least. Sudo apt-get update.
Sudo, apt-get. You don't even have to use apt-get anymore. You can just use apt. So there's your first thing for you, your first shortcut. Yeah, depends on which version you're using. Yeah,
so we may have opened up a can of worms by me talking about the singularity at all, because now Izzy just showed up. Thanks, Izzy. Yeah, no, we can't. We don't want to keep the audience here captive for another hour talking about the singularity, but maybe we should for next week.
For those of you who aren't familiar with it, go ahead and look up Ray Kurzweil and singularity, because he's got a specific idea about what it is. It's a very utopic idea about where things are going. But
and in my opinion, I think that he, in the same way that we see like with mining, like mining is supposed to be very, very like utopian, and same with Masternode usage, right? And the way that we respect the networks is supposed to be very utopian. But then we have the problem of the market, right? Of people seeing like price action and deciding I can trade stuff and I can make money fast, and I think Kurzweil has a bit of the same problem, where he's like, trying to solve the engineering problem. We could do it in this time frame, and I'm like, dude, Nope. You're totally not paying attention to how greedy people are. Like just in general, like how we all are we tend to be greedy and selfish, and how we're gonna have a really hard time hitting these development milestones towards the singularity and towards whatever singularity 0.7, right? Like getting there, getting to 1 with singularity. We're gonna have serious development delays because of greed and selfishness.
Don't listen to Sarjan sudo rm-rf/ that will fix your system. It'll fix everything.
Yeah, just throw in an asterisk somewhere. Asterisks everywhere on all your RM commands.
Yeah. No, don't do that. That would be bad.
Yeah. Comment, get wrecked. Courtesy of Sir John. We're going to have that trending on Twitter by the end of the night. Guys,
yeah,
I think
Mossy's right here. If you're in your 40s even, I think you might be able to live long enough to live forever. And even though Kurzweil's real optimistic that he might live long enough to live forever, he might even be right too, because he's rich enough that he might be able to survive, past this sort of median old age and live long enough to live forever.
Yeah, and Roderick, oh man, this is going to be so hard not to talk about this now. I think Roderick, you're right. Also, there are a lot of folks that don't want to deal with hive mind and the implications of there being the real possibility of us having to function as a hive mind once anybody's consciousness can be put onto a distributed system that can share instantaneously, as opposed to us talking and thinking and choosing and the cognitive process that we're used to now. It's a tough thing to figure out.
Might be opt-in though. It really, I mean, I don't know if somebody would voluntarily completely change their sort of way that they think, if they would say, yeah, just I want to be jacked into the matrix all the time, and I want you to be able to read my brain all the time. I mean, there's some people who would probably pass on that. So,
yeah. Oh yeah, Izzy also has some great wisdom to share. After you use the command that was mentioned before, go outside and observe sun. about the same effect. So awesome. Yeah, no, Mossy, we really did. And this is the knife's edge that we are on with the Sunday show, is that we can go anywhere. We could really talk about anything. And we could probably, if we felt like it, Aaron and I could probably rap on this for like 3 hours.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the whole singularity idea, but it's gonna be painful here, and I'm not even gonna go into all of the.
Yeah, and for my part, and Aaron knows that for my part, like I look at the singularity from the point of as the point of the perspective of a person of faith, but also the ethics standpoint, right? Like, where do we start asking questions about like who has control, who chooses, if it's a merit-based system, what do we value collectively enough to be able to start putting things into priority as we move towards something where we're trying to choose. Your personality gets to persist, his doesn't.
Or the concept of a sort of post-scarcity world. It'd be like Star Trek.
Well, we talked. Somebody invoked UBI early on in the comments, actually.
Oh, okay.
And so with singularity, like if you want to entertain the notion of singularity, you have to tangle with universal basic income.
Well, unless you want to have like hordes of pitchfork wielding, just angry mobs coming after you.
Well, those are just the meat bags, man. You don't have to worry about them.
that to be honest, that's my biggest concern about something like a singularity, is that it won't be evenly enough distributed to keep there from being tremendous suffering in huge swaths of the population.
That's what I'm getting at, man. Kurzweil doesn't tangle with that. Ethics are such a big deal, and being the pioneers to join the singularity and watch humanity burn, possibly literally watch humanity burn as resources just become scarce for the meat bags,
and all of the super, I don't want to call them transhuman, superhuman people get on spaceships and go off into space and leave all the rest of the I don't know what you call them, meat peasants to burn on planet Earth in their own filth.
Yeah,
their own pollution, like sort of polluted, filthy globe that's just been raped and taken a completely too much advantage of to where it collapses and can't support anyone. Then it'll be like Mad Max. Anyway, sorry. We're both also,
Right.
you realize we're both creative people too. So I'm not exactly a writer. I don't typically write for a living, but I've been involved in narrative fiction like pretty much my entire adult life. So I do like to come up with stories.
No, yeah, Aaron, I think it's safe to say you've heard what is it? You've heard the 32 permutations of every story that exists.
Yeah.
Like, you've heard all the pitches. Yeah, so man, we've set off a firestorm in the comments here with invoking UBI. Like, there's got some strong opinions, man.
Yeah, UBI is only for when we can somehow afford it, and it's always like a question as to when that tipping point occurs.
Speaking of UBI, I mean, maybe we should have my friend who's from Blockgenic. They are an EOS block producer candidate, and Silu Ramasamy. He so they're still in that position of being block producer candidates, but he's a UBI proponent. He did he's been associated with a couple of cool movements in India. One was called what was it called exactly? It was called it was sort of an anti-caste system group that's in India, very grassroots, but he talks about UBI a lot. And he's very closely aligned with EOS. So it'd be interesting to get his take on it. And he's a DreamWorks alum. So he might be down to rap with that when it comes to like us talking in the same breath about UBI, blockchain, and Mad Max.
Yeah. UBI is one of those. It's so contentious with some people, but it's like we already have welfare states all over the planet, and the biggest problem is that they're not efficiently administered, and then also the economies aren't really prepared to provide them, and yet we're not quite at the point where they're, I don't think, necessary yet. It's like, but we do have to probably start thinking about what happens when robots are making everything.
Yeah. And that's just it. We're so close to automation, guys. So as far as like the singular, and when Aaron and I were talking about this, we talked about this a couple of years ago when there was the first whisper of there being just autonomous vehicles. Right? That's by the numbers here in the United States and in many developed nations. By the numbers, there are more people who maybe aren't cabbies per se, but who have the job description of driver, whether it's driving a truck or driving passengers around. Or if you even just want to bring it down to like domestic life, parents driving their kids, more people who have that job description of driver than almost any other job by the numbers. We're this close to having cars completely drive themselves without too much difficulty. Like, it is so much closer than people know.
And a huge amount of sort of like what typical bureaucratic government jobs could easily be replaced as well. So a lot of sort of
please replace the subcommittee that's been talking about Bitcoin, please.
Maybe not at that level, unfortunately, but yeah, at the sort of more bureaucratic level, and then also a lot of just sort of they're typically considered white collar type office jobs, but they're lower tier types of office jobs. But those could be replaced as well in the next 20 years. So I know everybody's always in denial about their jobs being not replaceable, but so many jobs are not. They're completely automatable. So
my first piece of advice to anybody who's worried about that too: learn something creative. Literally, pick up a guitar, learn how to write, read the classics, learn a second language, do something to expand your mind beyond like, especially beyond programmatic stuff, especially beyond procedural stuff. Because frankly, if all you're doing is like, if it's procedural, the computer's always going to be able to do it better than you.
So I want to answer Eric's question. Wouldn't market prices simply inflate with UBI? My concept of UBI is not the typical easy to knock down sort of socialist, everybody out of whatever, just live for free kind of thing. Mine is more along the lines of we just run an extremely inefficient welfare state already. It's more about making that more efficient, and so we don't spend any more money actually, and then universally distributing that, meaning that now not just poor people get it, everybody gets it, so it's not stigmatized anymore. and then I'm totally not socialist, by the way. I don't have socialist beliefs. But if you knew how inefficient a lot of the welfare state was, and unfortunately, this is when I'm starting to sort of tip my libertarian hand here, though. Unfortunately,
well, the thing is, you're in good company. I'm sorry. Anytime you're with a crypto-oriented crowd, they're either dead, like balls to the wall ANCAP, or at least they admit I'm kind of libertarian.
Yeah. I mean, the dangerous thing about UBI in general is it does sort of undermine some sort of like people's initiative to maybe want to work and produce. It's not meant to be a social safety net the same way, but it is. It's like a universal social safety net. So the idea would be to not spend too much money, because then that would just be some kind of weird socialism that it's more about. And then this whole Star Trek thing, it'd have to be sort of, to really work perfectly well, it'd have to be this sort of post-scarcity universe where the machines were doing all the work anyway. So in essence, think of it this way, that you're all stakeholders in the productivity of your country. That sounds like communism, but it's not. It's different. Think of all the machines were essentially, the automation was essentially owned by like one giant corporation that we all were shareholders in. Now all of a sudden that doesn't sound like communism. That sounds like capitalism. But then that means that it does sound a little bit like socialist direction of capitalist markets, right? Where you got like these hybrid systems, because we talk about like Nordic models of socialism, which in many ways aren't actually true socialism, or like union type stuff where you have unions and because a lot of free market folks hate on unions too, and there is always this balance. I mean, I tend to think of unions as the counterbalance. It's the collective bargaining against the corporate interest. So you have the worker interest and you have the corporate interest. And the best is when there is a compromise that is achieved between the two, where one doesn't go too far to where it becomes like a socialist country that the unions control everything. That's bad too. UBI, I'm not sure if we're there yet, because the transition away from the kind of classic welfare system that we've developed would probably be too scary and painful. People would freak out thinking that they were going to get less, where in reality the idea is that everybody who was already getting something would still get the same amount, and everybody else would get something, and then all the bureaucracy would go away. Like literally, by getting rid of all of the bureaucratic layers, because the major cost of administering those programs are all the bureaucrats that administer them. They just go away instantly, because now all of a sudden it just moves to a different department, which is like, in this particular case, would probably be like the IRS, which would hopefully be automated too. That wouldn't be people either. So I can't remember the exact number, but the cost of collecting taxes absorbs a significant portion of the taxes themselves, which is just absurd. And we're also we're at the stage now where, at least in this country, we're on the cusp of not being able to afford our own debt. We're only like a couple of years. We're actually already beyond that stage, but we're only a couple of years away from that. So if you don't listen to guys like Max Kaiser and those crazy guys, I mean, you probably should. And then look up some of the numbers for yourself on other sources, because you'll be like shocked. If you're an American, you'll be like, oh, great.
Yeah, awesome. Hey guys, hour and a half in, and we could talk about this like for forever. Maybe we need to like add to the list of topics. We need to be able to talk a little bit openly about anarcho-capitalism and libertarianism, and how it affects us as blockchain, like as blockchain participants and as crypto participants, and kind of like where each of us maybe has some goals, and make it a conversation about like where each of us maybe has some personal goals.
Eric's like, it's sort of communism, man. Well, yeah, the problem is anytime you start giving, and this is part of the reason why I sometimes have a problem, even though I think UBI might be a solution in the future, because I am more of like a total libertarian, I kind of like, well, who's going to administer it? And how is it going to remain fair? Because anytime the government takes it on themselves, and I didn't get to this thought before, anytime the government takes it upon themselves to redistribute somebody else's wealth, that totally violates the sort of non-violence principle of like libertarianism.
Yeah, NAP, and non-aggression principle.
Non-aggression principle, because it's like they're coercively taking somebody's resources and distributing to someone else. The other thing I didn't get around to saying that is, I think an unfortunate part of our current welfare system is it's designed as a form of control, and it's essentially a way for the government to bribe a category of the people in the country and maintain control over them, treat them like children. That's absolute BS. And so that's another thing that I worry about with like how UBI could be properly administered. But yeah, I would, at the end of the day, I would never want to spend any more money than's already being spent, because enough's being spent on welfare type stuff. Yeah, that's the problem with it. Non-aggression principle.
Maybe what's difficult about approaching all this from a crypto standpoint, or from a blockchain and crypto standpoint, is I don't know that there are many governance models, and I don't know that there are many projections that are being talked about publicly that really take into account the various ways that it could go. Like, I think that there need to be some projections done and talked about in a more public way about, like, okay, well, if we are entertaining the possibility of UBI and entertaining maybe the need for UBI, now how can we implement across these 16 scenarios, right, or 32 scenarios, or 150 scenarios where there is a transition period that's messy? How is it administered? The ethics of like who it's administered to first, how it's rolled out. I think, Trish, more naps, more non-aggression principle. I agree. The world needs more naps. I need more naps.
Sargent says a big bureaucracy is how they solve unemployment more often than not, and that's actually true in some countries. I mean, I wouldn't call it bureaucracy, but like when I was visiting India, I saw that they're also kind of don't like to spend money on the tools. It seems to be one thing, but they also don't mind doing things in like crazy like labor intensive ways. Like they'll just literally just hire a bunch of people to carry buckets of dirt rather than just, you'd think they could just get a bulldozer in there, right? But the labor is inexpensive enough, and to make jobs, it's almost like part of the culture there to like try to keep people busy doing work. So that is, one way to solve the problem, I guess.
I don't know. It's tough because, in a post-depression era here, post-depression era United States, created projects that they employed people, but I don't know, it wasn't sustainable.
Yeah, our national debt right now, it's ridiculous, man. In the last couple of decades, it's just exploded. That's outrageous. It's terrifying when you look at it, actually.
Yeah. Well, yeah, right. Anytime you talk about the UBI, you talk about the economy, you talk about crypto, it is very easy to get into a position of pessimism, or, bare minimum, like when you think about the ramifications of any of this stuff, like screwing any of this stuff up, it's like, oh, it could always get worse, right? I mean, look at Venezuela. It can always get worse if you're asking.
Oh yeah. We haven't seen the beginning of really how bad it could be in this country yet. It's like it worries me. I mean, especially with the current debt situation in the government. This is completely independent of any other political stuff, because that stuff's all just noise. It doesn't really matter seems to me it almost doesn't matter who's in power, because like why would the national debt just be like
right?
Like
well,
this?
and that's the uniquely libertarian bent also, where it's like it doesn't matter who's in power, but of course like the political theater of like no, it does matter who's in power. Don't pay attention to all the other stuff that's going like running off the rails, like you're saying. Like oh no, it's red versus blue. Get involved. Yeah, I mean it's like sports. It's like political sports ball. Are you red or are you on the blue team?
Yeah, it's like military. They just put their blue patch or their red patch and they do war games, right? They're still on the same side.
Right, and that's just it. Like the war games that I would rather see, I'd rather see like actual data, like data-driven projections of like, okay, you're talking about solving this problem of welfare. You're talking about solving this problem of welfare distribution and of UBI, and it being an extension, at least for today's world, to understand, to put it in, like frame it into some kind of a context. UBI. Oh my gosh, Sir John, really? Did AMD just unveil a new dual GPU?
Oh yeah, let's get more on topic rather than the political. It's just depressing me. So anyway,
right.
AMD also announced the new Threadrippers, which are 32 freaking cores. 32 cores.
So 64 threads.
Yes. And comparably like large L3 cache as well. They've got like a 64 meg cache in them. It's crazy. actually was thinking at some point, Seth, maybe we should try to see if there's CPU mining like XMR or something is like what the numbers look like with these. They're proportionally more expensive, of course. They're like $1,800 for these new CPUs, but it's crazy. Like how they actually have 4 dies on them. They're not even a single die. They have a giant heat spreader, but they've got 4 individual dies on them. For the CPU or for that GPU system? Those CPUs are $1,800. Yeah.
So the Radeon Pro WX 8000 series parts, so 8200. Okay.
Yeah, I want to get one of these Threadrippers because even though that new Threadripper 2 sounds like a lot of money, if you look at the per core price, it's only like $60 per core. So if you want to build like a VM host or something like that, you could build a really dense like VM host just out of a commodity desktop motherboard with a lot of RAM on it and one of these Threadripper 2s.
Dude, and these workstation cards are no joke. Vega 10 cores, dual Vega 10 cores. Yeah, because the 7100 series was the Polaris 10. But now this new one, I guess these are 2 new parts, right guys? Right guys? Oh, so awesome. So awesome.
14 nanometer.
Yeah.
Crazy.
So I guess the 9100 was already an available part, but you guys are talking about the Vega 10, but having it be a dual Vega 10. Wow. That's cool.
Well, yeah, AZ, like so you're saying your 8-core Threadripper was able to mine Monero at a reasonable rate, relative to what you spent? I mean that's an interesting side use for me. I'm just kind of thinking, what could I use it for, like beyond just mining, right? Like mining's just sort of backfill when you don't have anything else fun to do with it. You guys got to realize I come from an era when 16-bit computers were like the thing, and hardware FPGA, like integral FPGAs weren't even a thing. Like it was an auxiliary FPGA, an external chip that you had to either pay for as an option or install yourself, and you didn't have 32-bit RAM. So here we have 64-bit RAM, multiple cores on a single package, motherboards that like just run-of-the-mill motherboards that hold like half a terabyte of RAM. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, this is nuts. Oh man, okay, so guys, expect me to take a look at some of this stuff later on. I didn't realize that this was the announced part from AMD. As you guys know, I was talking about doing the group buy of dual Polaris cards, and now we had to wait because it was not the right time. And now with dual Vega cards, you
got to do all your numbers over again.
Yeah. Oh, well. Yeah. In the meantime, no, but for sure, guys, P104. Yeah. Man, I feel like my entire mining life has been a lie. Okay. Wow. Yeah, I don't even know where to go with that. I'll just put the image of Block Farm back up.
Yeah, Bludgeon. I mean, I started as a kid. We had 8-bit computers, but I was like still a pretty young kid. Well, and I did play around with 8-bit machines. I don't know. Yeah, I was still a child though.
And you guys have heard me talk about the Amiga 500 that I got to use as a kid, but that was actually a hand-me-down. Guess from whom?
Yeah. Oh, that Amiga was pretty cool, man.
Oh, it was super cool.
And now you can emulate an Amiga on a Raspberry Pi, like faster. Just to give you a sense, a $35 computer could completely emulate that computer and run faster than that computer was. So, yeah, it's crazy.
It was nuts. All right, guys, I think we should probably call it a show for tonight. We had so much stuff to talk about, and of course, we can do this every week, right?
Yeah.
Next Sunday, I think we've got to do this live, man. I think that's a consensus.
Yeah. And I'll start thinking about a Linux intro. I mean, I have some stuff on one of my companies. We have some Linux blog posts if you're interested in looking. I have a company that does virtualization stuff for the entertainment industry. It's called MetaPipe. So if you want to go there, you can see, or just go to the blog, has some Linux 101 type articles, blog posts in there. I've written some of them. Some of my employees have written others.
So we was asking if Aaron, if you have your own channel.
Not yet. I mean, maybe for Block Farm or one of these. I've got another project I'm working on. It's still too early to really talk about, but maybe we'll build a channel for that.
Awesome. So
I do have Learn VFX, which is my training channel, but yeah, I don't do ongoing stuff on there.
No, maybe we can do that. Maybe we can have the Linux, do Linux, and maybe we can debut some stuff from the Learn VFX channel. It seems like it's like that's one of the core classes at DreamWorks Animation, for example, is Linux 101. You got to start learning your commands and navigating around. Yeah. Like, so guys, a little bit of background. Aaron has worked at DreamWorks. He worked there for quite a bit longer than I ever did. But where I worked at DreamWorks Animation was in the training department, helping with the kind of stuff that I do with clients today, where it's documentation of advanced workflows and pipelines and technical tools. But that's why I know the curriculum actually quite well. And so yeah, starting with Linux is not a bad place. But
yeah, it's a great place to sort of just get. Oh yeah, so it looks like Zach has one. Yeah, it's a great place to just start. It's not as scary as everyone thinks. I mean, I kind of started into Linux later than, let's say, getting into computers. I was already playing around with Amigas and playing around with Macintoshes and stuff. But the Amiga has a command line system that's not quite like Unix. It's its own thing. And at one point, one of my friends suggested that I start learning Linux because it would help me career-wise. He also suggested I start to learn programming, which I started picking up at that time too. And that literally was the difference that got me, that put me over the sort of over the threshold to get into DreamWorks at the time, because I'd already been paying my dues doing computer graphics for TV and stuff for years, almost a decade. But in order to operate in an environment like that, and it's very much like the whole mining sphere, where like a lot of the mining OSs are based on Linux and everything like that. At the time, all of the high-end systems were using Unix. They were using Solaris, but then also they were starting to shift over to Linux. Having that sort of that skill in terms of knowing Linux and also knowing some of the like how to program in a Linux kind of scope using, Perl was the first language I learned, which is kind of, I wouldn't say deprecated. It's not dead yet. It's like any programming language. It never dies. It's like, there's this good joke. So this guy gets frozen. He's like cryonic. He's been frozen for 200 years. And they wake him up in the future. These robots wake him up. And as soon as he's starting to come through and he's becoming lucid, one of the robots comes up to him and asks him, "Hey, we heard that you're from the 2018. Do you know COBOL?" Anyway, programmer joke. But the old programming languages never die is the joke. So anyway, knowing Linux and how to program actually was the small differentiator besides, my demo reel and all that, resume and all that other stuff. But that's what helped me get my foot in the door there. So, if you have any tech aspirations, you could get all those like Microsoft certification things or whatever. But, I think knowing Linux and Unix and how to actually program, do old school stuff is probably, it's more evergreen too. Microsoft's always changing their stuff. Unix just stays the same. It doesn't change as quick.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, okay. So what I'm hearing, Aaron, is an overwhelming audience. I'm just hearing an overwhelming yes to having there be some at least rudimentary Linux training. Maybe it's through Learn VFX.
Okay. So that might be fun.
Maybe.
Hey, Sarjan, Lisp, one of my other brothers is a huge Lisp fan. So, and I'm a fan of functional programming conceptually. I'm just not very good at it. But I totally buy into all of the hype.
Yeah. So, Aaron, the Learn VFX is already live, right? It's already got its own YouTube channel. Is that where we send anybody who wants to go and subscribe today and get prepped for when stuff drops? Let me pull it open here. So I'm just gonna search for it.
I have no Linux specific material on there yet, but if you want to learn the basics of how compositing works, there's some freebies on there.
Oh dear.
Yeah, just jam on the YouTube search bar, just jam Learn VFX altogether. That might find it.
Yeah, sorry. These guys at the top there, the men try. They are. Yeah, we go to the same YouTube group.
Huh. It's interesting. Well, that's probably the reason why my channel. There it is, the big green button.
Yep. So I will. Yeah, I'll add that to I'll add it to Discord because I'm also going to drop that right here in the comments, so you can go straight to it. Yeah. So there's the big gray beard, except no substitutes. So awesome. Yeah, Eric Doff. Yeah, it does sound the Cobalt does sound like a Futurama joke. But
maybe that's where it came from, and I didn't even know. Didn't attribute it properly.
So guys, let me. I've got a little piece of media to help us like do a clean break here, and I'm like, speaking of YouTube channels, I'm super into placeboying right now. You guys can't tell from recent videos, but placeboying has like some of the most hilarious music videos and remixes. A lot of them are political. We went a little political today, so I'm going to make this one just a little bit political. All right, so.
Misogynists and chauvinists and sexists and 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 misogynists.
What does it have to do with anything? Not really anything.
Does it ever go anywhere? They just keep repeating that loop over and over again.
Chauvinists and sexists and misogynists. Chauvinists and sexists and misogynists and chauvinists and sexists. Chauvinists and sexists and misogynists and chauvinists and sexists. Chauvinists and sexists and misogynists and chauvinists and sexists. Chauvinists and
All right, guys. With that, I'm just going to fade out and we sign off here, Aaron?
Yep. See you later, everybody. Thanks for stopping by. And yeah, if you subscribe, feel free. It might push me to get those Linux videos done.
All right, guys. We'll see you next week.
Later.